Part 44. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 449. The reconnaissance team was lucky. After walking less than a kilometer along the new route, they found an overturned heavy truck on the edge of a cliff. The bed of the truck had rolled off the cliff, leaving only a trailer head lying there alone. Compared to the guy in the tracked armored patrol car who didn't even have time to put on his shoes, the truck driver's situation was slightly better. At least he was wearing a complete set of high-temperature protective equipment, which was just a broken metal frame. It penetrated his abdomen and pinned him to the seat. Although the improved airbag can protect the driver's head, it cannot block sharp metal sections. There is a heavily armed soldier sitting in the passenger seat of the truck. From the logo on his armband, we can tell that he is an escort belonging to the 3rd Transportation Squadron of the garrison base. His legs are completely deformed by the console. Stuck inside. The blood that oozed from his thigh dyed the fabric under the rubber layer of the insulating suit purple-black, and there were a lot of scratch marks on the fabric of his pants. He had tried to pull his leg out from under the console many times. But obviously, they all failed. The visor of his helmet was open, and the moisture in the entire facial tissue had been evaporated. The twisted and shriveled face looked a bit scary. A small amount of congestion overflowed from the nostrils and condensed into a dark brown lump. The cause of death of this escort was a bullet that entered from the mouth and penetrated the palate and skull. A 9mm self-defense pistol fell into the cab. The muzzle of the gun was stained with a few strands of oral cavity that had been carbonized by the high temperature. The tissue was in pieces, and the deceased's right hand was hanging in the air less than 10 centimeters directly above the pistol. "It's suicide," Yvonne said. "I can tell," Kaylan nodded. No one could find any valuable clues on the truck. The truck received an emergency evacuation notice while performing a transportation mission, and they knew nothing about what happened at the base. However, it can be seen from the driving records that after receiving this notice, the truck first turned around and drove towards the base, but after traveling less than 2 kilometers, it turned back again and started running at full speed on the road. They were obviously skeptical about the emergency evacuation notice at the beginning, otherwise they would not have turned to the base, but they realized the seriousness of the problem before they drove far, and began to follow the requirements in the notice to the mining area. "Fleeing, I think they must have seen some horrific scene," Kaylan analyzed. "Is it an earthquake?" asked the Hound. "Possible." As soon as he said the possible word Ian's brows suddenly frowned. As if he thought of something, he patted his helmet hard. "No. We missed a very key element. This mistake is too low level and we shouldn't have made it." "What?" Hound looked at Kaylan confused. "Time difference. We ignored the time difference between this emergency evacuation notice and the time of the earthquake," Kaylan said quickly. "According to the data observed by ARC, the time when the earthquake occurred deep in the molten mine area was 9:30 a.m. that day 10, but this emergency evacuation notice was sent at 9:22 a.m., a full 8 minutes earlier than the time of the earthquake. Even if the transmission of seismic waves takes a certain amount of time, there is no possibility of an error in the monitoring data. It's so big." "You mean, the garrison base predicted the earthquake in advance," Iabra confirmed to Kaylan in a very serious tone. "It can be understood in a literal sense, but my subconscious has been telling me that things may not be that simple." Kaylan shook his head. "Is there something wrong with this? The earthquake was predicted 8 minutes in advance, and then an emergency evacuation notice was issued to all personnel and units in the molten mine area. Logically speaking, there is no problem, but the wrong thing is the time difference, 8 minutes. This emergency evacuation notice was 8 minutes in advance," Kaylan said. "Kaylan, when have you ever been able to talk without telling others? Can't you explain the problem clearly in one breath? Tell me, is there anything wrong with these 8 minutes?" Hound complained. "Isn't that what I was talking about?" "You interrupted me." "Okay, Kaylan complained smoothly, and continued with the previous topic. The problem lies in these 8 minutes, although 8 minutes does not count, it's so generous, but it's not that stressful. But the entire emergency evacuation notice only has 2 words. Doesn't the person who sent the notice even have time to type an extra line of text to explain it? As soon as Kaylan said this, everyone else in the team, including Aya, fell into brief contemplation. Indeed, from the content point of view, this emergency evacuation notice is completely inconsistent with the regulations. Even if the person responsible for sending the notice is in a hurry to escape for his life, the entire notice should not contain only the words "escape quickly." As Hound said earlier, this is really remiss. It doesn't take much time to explain the cause and effect. It only takes 2 sentences. For people who type quickly, it only takes less than 10 seconds, even if you really don't have time to enter text, use the voice input method. Or simply calling the emergency command template is much more reliable than this mindless sentence of "run away." Just like the emergency 039 and emergency 000 that Kaylan once asked Layton to send in the Leviathan incident. Although these codes are equally simple, at least you can understand them immediately after comparing them with the code book. Meaning, Kaylan and the others also saw the result of the illegal editing of the emergency evacuation notice. After receiving the notice, the truck not only did not evacuate outside the mining area immediately, but also turned around and wanted to return to the base for verification. This kind of announcement that is not edited according to the regulations is completely unconvincing. Even if the person who edited this emergency evacuation notice escaped from the mining area alive later, he would probably be sentenced for dereliction of duty. There is another place where the timeline does not match up. Look at this driving record. At 9:22 minutes and 3 seconds, the truck received an emergency evacuation notice, and the driver stopped the car. At 9:23 and 15 seconds, the truck began to turn towards the garrison base. At 9:25 and 40 seconds, the truck changed direction for the second time and increased the speed to the limit. Kaylan continued, at this time, the distance it was nearly 5 minutes before the earthquake broke out. Then, the truck ran wildly on the road for more than 10 kilometers at a speed of hundreds of kilometers per hour before being caught up by the earthquake. So what did the truck driver see before that? Will make him change his mind about returning to the base. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 450. When you said that, I also felt that something was fishy. Hound held his chin and said, "What's that cloth? What's your name?" Brea glanced at the Hound, knowing that the other party was deliberately teasing her, but she did not show the tough attitude before. "Can you be a little more serious?" "I'm very serious," Hound deliberately put on a solemn expression. "So, Leader Brea, what do you think about this matter?" The person who edited the emergency evacuation notice committed serious malfeasance. Brea hesitated for a moment, and then said, "We all know this, and you don't need to tell me. What I want to ask is, what do you think about this obviously problematic timeline?" Hound said. "I won't jump to conclusions without solid evidence." "I didn't ask you to make a conclusion, I just made a guess." Hound looked at her with a smile. "Don't you even dare to guess." "What do you want me to say?" Aya asked. "It's because I'm stupid and can't think of a reason, so I asked Team Leader Brea for advice," Hound said, and looked at Kaylan. "What about Kaylan?" "I suspect that the earthquake has something to do with the garrison base," Kaylan said. "Do you think this earthquake was caused by the garrison base?" Layton asked. "But, didn't we have this assumption before?" "The conclusion is that the garrison base is not capable of causing an earthquake of this magnitude. The absence of a garrison base does not mean that there are no traces of Alpha civilization." Yvonne shook his head. "Why are the ruins of Alpha civilization involved again?" "There is no direct relationship between the two, right?" Layton said with some confusion. "If the mechanism in the ruins is triggered, it is impossible for the garrison base to obtain it in advance. Warning, right? We are all old hunters, and we have been exposed to the traps of alpha civilization quite a lot, let alone 8 minutes, we probably won't even have 8 seconds of reaction time. Then what if they deliberately set off this mechanism? That makes sense. Ivan analyzed, suppose there is something very important in that ruins, but to get that thing, the mechanism must be triggered, so the person in charge of the operation asked the people stationed in the base to evacuate in advance before entering the ruins. That's not right, Kaylan shook his head. If this is the case, we can evacuate a few days in advance. We can wait until all personnel and property in the base have withdrawn from the mining area before exploring the ruins. This way, we can explore the ruins to the greatest extent possible. Reduce losses. Instead of hastily issuing a 2-word emergency evacuation notice just minutes before the earthquake erupts, and this level of action, no matter what the reason, must reported to ARC for filing, right? That's true. Ivan nodded, but in this case, the logic of the whole thing becomes an endless loop. I think that whether it caused an earthquake or issued an emergency evacuation notice, it should have been an impromptu initiative by the initiator of the disaster. They may not have intended to trigger the mechanism at the beginning, but they encountered a situation where they were riding a tiger in the ruins and had to conditions that trigger it. It's hard to get off the tiger. Suppose this group of people are trapped in a closed passage, behind them is an approaching solid wall covered with spikes. This wall gradually compresses their activity space, trying to avoid being penetrated by the spikes. If they are destined to be crushed into meat, they can only move forward, but moving forward will trigger another mechanism and cause an earthquake, but at least there is a glimmer of hope for survival. What will you choose? Kaylan said. I will kill other people in the ruins and then commit suicide, Ayabrita said without hesitation. Compared with all the people and property in the entire garrison base and the molten mine area, the lives of a few people are not important. An extremely rational approach, Kaylan nodded to Aya. It seems that when faced with the tram problem, you should be the one who can pull the lever without hesitation. If you are going to suffer losses no matter what, then you should do your best to minimize the losses. This is the first issue that needs to be considered, Aya said solemnly. The trolley problem is originally a question that tests human nature and morality. Although pulling the lever can change the number of people crushed to death by the trolley from 5 to 1, it means that the person who pulled the lever becomes the murderer. He is killing the person who didn't have to die with his own hands. This is just looking at this issue from the perspective of a bystander, but what if the person with the right to make this decision is tied to the track? I have no doubt about Leader Brita's noble spirit of sacrifice and resolute execution. These two things are necessary for an excellent Security Bureau agent, Kaylan said in a deep voice. Even if those people are a noble person like you who dares to sacrifice himself, but what if all the people and property in the garrison base and the molten mine area are the only ones tied up alone on the other track? What do you mean? Ayabrita was slightly startled and asked. Being forced to trigger the mechanism does not necessarily mean that the lives of the people in the ruins have been threatened. It may also be that they have endured unimaginable temptations, Kaylan said word by word. Unimaginable temptation, I repeated the 7 words. For the sake of valuable relics, they can ignore the lives of everyone in the entire mining area. Then it depends on the value of this relic. Assuming that this thing is enough to change the fate of all mankind, let alone sacrifice the people in the entire molten mine area, even if it has to pay the price of half the population of the Ark, it must be people in power will make the same decision, Kaylan said. Then they can't wait until all the people in the mining area have been evacuated before taking measures, Aya asked confused. As someone who has not participated in the exploration of ruins, Leader Brita, you can understand your thoughts, Kaylan said calmly, but many times, opportunities are fleeting. As long as there is a trace of hesitation, the hunter we may miss the prey. You are sophistry. But judging from the clues we have so far, it seems that only the sophistry makes sense. Kaylan shrugged helplessly, turned around and continued to inspect the cab of the truck. In addition to some tools, a deck of playing cards and half a box of cigarettes in the glove box, he found a small locked box in the secret compartment under the driver's seat. However, after everyone opened the small box with a little excitement, they were disappointed again. What was in the box was just some nanoalloy scraps that were cut during rough processing, most of which would living on the black market, becoming part of the driver's gray income. However, when Kaylan picked up one of the scraps, he let out a light sigh. Strange. Leighton, come here. What's wrong? Did you find anything? Look at this piece of scrap material. The octagonal hole on it has a very smooth edge. Will the equipment that processes nanoalloy leave such marks on the scrap material? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 451. Let me take a look. Leighton took the scrap and stared at the octagonal hole for a few seconds, then shook his head. The so-called rough machining actually means using a high-power laser cutting machine. Irregular-shaped nanoalloy ingots are cut into alloy bricks for easy transportation, based on the physical properties of nanoalloy. Except for the heavy equipment and ultra-high temperature furnaces on the Ark, it is difficult for ordinary tools to stay on it. Leaves traces. For example, have you seen this nanoalloy bolt on my robotic arm? This is a custom-made part with non-standard specifications. It needs to be pressed and formed with a 150,000-ton forging press, and then used with a pulse laser. Only through fine repair with a water mill can such precision be achieved, and the accuracy of this octagonal hole is no less than that of my bolt. Leighton continued. If this is material recovered from scrap parts, that makes sense, but the question is this thing cut from a billet? Could it be the traces left by the Alpha civilization when it processed nanoalloy? With their forging equipment, it shouldn't be difficult to do it, Kaylan speculated. This should be. However, when Kaylan picked up another long piece of leftover material, he found that there was still a string of clear inscriptions on it. This was neither the writing used by humans nor the writing of the Alpha civilization. Look at this. This writing doesn't look like the writing of Alpha civilization. Hearing what Kaylan said, the facial expressions of Hound, Yvonne, and others suddenly changed slightly. They immediately gathered around and focused their attention on the leftover material lying in Ian's palm. You don't think these characters are the characters of Alpha civilization? Hound gave Kaylan a thoughtful look. Among the people present, except for Valentina and the agents in Ayabrita's group, all know Ian's abilities. Since Kaylan has said this, it can only mean that the inscription on this scrap of material is neither the writing of human civilization nor the Alpha writing that is common in ruins. Is it a relic of a third-party civilization? In addition to us and the Alpha civilization, there was another civilization that appeared on this planet, Yvonne said. I don't think it seems like these nanoalloys were smelted by the Alpha people, and these inscriptions should have something to do with them. I am more inclined to think that this is a kind of ciphertext or an ancient text that is rarely used, just like the early days of human civilization. Like the oracle bone inscriptions and cuneiform writing, these writings are also very different from the writing we use now. Except for scholars who specialize in studying ancient writings, most people cannot discern their meaning. The Hound shook his head. Kaylan, have you studied that kind of ancient writing? I read a few related papers when I was bored, Kaylan said with a wry smile. I don't know more than 20 ancient characters of human civilization in total, let alone the ancient characters of Alpha civilization. Kaylan paused suddenly, and then said to the others in an almost joking tone, but I always feel that these words do not belong to the Alpha civilization. He slightly emphasized the word feel, but if he didn't distinguish it deliberately, it would be difficult to detect the hidden meaning in Ian's words. Kaylan once explained to Hound and others how to read Alpha text. Unlike human writing, Alpha civilization's writing cannot be translated literally using human language logic. Whether it is language or text, These information carriers seem to be a very special method, is like encrypting it, and only a specific decoder can read the meaning. The information that was instilled into Ian's mind was the decoder of these words. Unfortunately, so far, Lan can only use this decoder but cannot decipher its working principle. The difference in difficulty between these two things is like the streets in fantasy novels filled with magic apprentices and great magisters whose names can be recorded in history. The former only needs to wave the wand and recite specific incantations to release spells, while the latter requires studying the origin of the world, the nature of magic, the sequence of elements, and the compatibility and reactions of different elements to create new spells. Everyone knows how to use a mobile phone, but only a few people can build one. With this decoder, Lan can read the Alpha civilization's text no matter how it changes. But this time, facing this string of inscriptions, the decoder did not show any reaction. Although the characters of human civilization have undergone earth-shaking changes in appearance over the course of thousands of years of development, their core logic has not changed much. Almost all ancient characters can be translated into modern characters without any hindrance. The meanings are basically the same, and the ancient characters of the Alpha civilization should be the same. But in Ian's eyes, the difference between this string of inscriptions and the Alpha characters is as huge as the difference between the Alpha characters and human characters. This difference is so big that it cannot be explained by ancient writing or ciphertext. This is a completely different and brand new language system. Ivan's guess is not wrong. This string of inscriptions comes from a third-party civilization. But the question is, why do the words of a third-party civilization appear on the creations of the Alpha civilization? Could there have been any intersection between these two civilizations? Lan had said this for the sake of it, and those who knew about it naturally understood that these words did not belong to the Alpha civilization. Only the agents of the Security Bureau were still diligently searching the files, trying to find similar ones among the vast Alpha text rubbings. Character of. These things are of little help to our mission, right? Ayabrita glanced at her subordinates who were staring at the screen, feeling a little speechless. Even if this is a clue related to the new civilization, we should put this matter aside and complete the task first. You're right, Lan nodded, but just when an agent subconsciously wanted to take the box of scraps, he moved a step in front of him with a different tone. If I remember correctly, everything found in the wilderness, except for important documents and technological equipment, belongs to the discoverer, right? Even if the Security Bureau wants it, it has to spend credits to buy it, right? Aren't those inscriptions considered important documents? Aya asked. Forget it. But don't forget, I am still the commander of this reconnaissance team. The proceeds from the exploration will be kept by me for the time being. Is that okay? As for how to divide the spoils, we should put this matter aside first and wait until the mission is completed. Let's talk about it after we return to the Ark. Lan quickly returned what Ayabrita had just said to her. Team leader, according to the regulations, it seems like this. The agent turned his head and glanced at Aya, and was shocked to find that his immediate boss, who was usually known for his good temper, had an expression on his face at this time. It was extremely difficult to see, and it felt like I would go crazy later. Okay, Ayabrita stared at Lan for more than 10 seconds, then gritted her teeth and nodded vigorously. You are right. But please don't use divide the spoils next time, I don't like this word. Both of them returned what the other had just said, but there was a big difference in their momentum. If you don't count the spoils, then this thing has to be settled at the standard purchase price, right? 10% is ours. Hound rubbed his hands. Hey, if this is really the text of a third-party civilization, but for the first time, I discovered that the purchase price must be expressed in units of 100 million, right? The value of this thing will be judged by the people at the Institute and has nothing to do with me. Aya snorted coldly and walked away with the weapon in hand. Continue to search the area around here and pay more attention to your steps. Although the truck bed fell into the rift, there might be something scattered on the ground when it overturned. Wipe your eyes and don't accidentally step on something valuable. Yees baby, Hound shouted in the team channel. Just when Iabra walked away, Kaylan specially cut into a one-to-one communication channel and said something to him. I think this string of inscriptions is inevitably connected with the earthquake. Where did you see it? The Hound asked immediately. Intuition, every time I have this strong intuition, the things I sense are very accurate. I'm not sure whether it's just good luck or because of the little tricks the stone tablet made in my head. Kaylan replied. Hound originally wanted to ask some more questions, but Kaylan had already switched back the communication channel, so he had no choice but to give up. But there was one thing he didn't doubt, Ian's intuition was indeed accurate. But he couldn't figure out why the string of inscriptions was connected with the earthquake. Scraps like this cut from the ingot may have been lying in this box a few months ago. The driver just needed a chance to bring them back to the Ark for sale. If this scrap was an earthquake, it was hot that day. The two things might have been related in the slightest before, but the truck's mission record clearly stated that this batch of nano-alloys had been roughly processed half a year ago. It belongs to the inventory accumulated in the garrison base and has not had time to be transported. I'm puzzled. The Hound patted his helmet, but at this moment, there was a faint beep sound in his ears. His first reaction was that he had damaged his helmet. After 2 seconds, the Hound realized that the beep sound was a universal distress signal on the Ark. Distress signal. I received a distress signal. This direction, Hound immediately shouted in the team communication channel. He turned around in a circle, and after determining the direction from which the distress signal was sent, he quickly moved towards that direction. Ran over. The special agent team remains in place, and the others will follow. Ivan, be prepared for rescue. There may be survivors this time, Kaylan said. He also received the weak distress signal after running more than 10 meters. Although the chance of survival of the person who sent the distress signal is not optimistic, but at least this is the first distress signal they have received since entering the molten mine area. Valentina, occupy the commanding heights. Asano, Akira and Leighton are in charge of the left and right wings. Zwilagito and Ivan follow me, and Old Dog, come back. This is a general distress signal, except for those stationed at the base. Not only will the survivors use it, but those from the heretical sect will also definitely use it. I know, the Hound responded. After running nearly 100 meters in the direction of the distress signal, he lay down behind a stone about half a man's height and began to use the scope on his gun to observe the situation ahead. When launching the drone, pay attention to the height. It should not exceed 50 meters, otherwise it will be locked by the air defense system in the mining area. Kaylan squatted down behind the boulder and said to Leighton. Understood. A drone with 3 pairs of horizontal rotors flew out of the backpack behind Leighton. In addition to the mechanical snake, he also carried several different unmanned detection equipment. Although the remote control radius in the molten mine area is only a pitiful 200 meters, it is completely enough for a reconnaissance team of this size. At least, in terms of safety and concealment, drones are much better than traditional meat reconnaissance. Directly ahead is a hilly area. Of course, the hills here do not refer to hills in the conventional sense, but a special landform caused by the collision and extrusion of 2 rock plates, and the joint is undulating in a wavy shape. The originally flat ground is now like a swimming ring squeezed out of a fat man's belly. Layers of folds are piled up, and there are cracks everywhere between the folds that emit high-temperature gas and toxic smoke. If you are not careful, you will slip into the abyss filled with magma. The source of the signal is right here, hidden behind a certain fold. The Hound muttered, the survivors, I'm wondering. P.S. Thanks to Shannon for the 500 starting coins. P.P.S. The conceptual descriptions in these recent chapters may be a bit confusing. This is due to the author's limited talent and extremely low professional level, So he cannot describe it in precise and academic terms. This is a brand new language that is completely different from the logic of human language, causing some concepts to give people a very vague feeling. There are also such problems in the early chapters of this book, which I really can't solve. After all, it is too difficult to describe something that does not exist in reality, even if it is a creature in the Cthulhu mythos. They are all transformed and pieced together based on the creatures that exist in reality. For the convenience of reading, everyone can just look at this thing as a kind of magic. Although my original intention was to bring the language of Alpha civilization closer to machine language, I gave up, considering that with the current level of science and technology of mankind, deciphering machine language may be more convenient than deciphering natural language. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-San. Chapter 452. This is pretty good. I'm afraid it's a trap, Kaylan whispered. How about? Hound turned to look at the security bureau agents who followed Ian's orders and stayed around the truck. Let them get in. Don't worry, the drone hasn't arrived yet. Kaylan shook his head. The drone flew smoothly just above the squeeze zone, and 4 high-resolution cameras captured the entire scene of the squeeze zone. About 160 meters away from Ian's hiding place, the cylindrical rescue capsule was stuck between 2 folds. At the top of the rescue capsule, 2 orange signal lights flashed continuously. People are still alive, the Hound exclaimed with some excitement. The signal light on the top of the rescue cabin has 3 colors. Green means that the survivors in the cabin are in good condition, and red means that no signs of life of the survivors can be detected or the survivors have died. After leaving the rescue cabin, the orange color means that the survivors are in a precarious state with extremely weak signs of life. The rescue capsule that originally contained Marshall's body floating into deep space had a red light flashing. No, this is an empty ship's rescue capsule. Even empty ships cannot enter the molten mine area. Where did this rescue capsule come from? Layton's question rang in the team channel. What's so strange about this? It's obvious that the airship this guy was on was destroyed by anti-aircraft weapons in the mining area, and then the life capsule ejected from the ship fell here, Hound said. That's not the case, old dog, you don't know. Before I came here, I checked the information on the Alpha civilization's air defense system in the molten mine. The accuracy and sensitivity of these things are not comparable to human air defense weapons. If this life capsule is attacked by an airship, if it is ejected, it will be locked as a target the moment it breaks away from the airship, and there will be no chance of it falling to the ground intact, Layton explained. The Alpha people will not talk to you about international conventions. Even if it is, they can also hit the rescue capsules without fail. What's more, those dead things that no one controls can't tell what is an intruder and what is a survivor. I think even if they have the ability to distinguish, they will open fire without hesitation. In the eyes of the Alpha civilization, each of us is an intruder who should be strangled, Yvonne added. What a ghost, Layton, can you tell what level of airship this life capsule belongs to? Hound asked. Wait a minute, I'll let the drone get closer, Layton said as he gently turned the joystick of the remote control with his fingers. The drone's floating height suddenly dropped, and it came close to the rescue capsule. Nearby. It is the MSA-02C Universal Rescue Capsule. This rescue capsule is produced by the Martha Aviation Industry Company under the SOMA Consortium. This rescue capsule has a large market share, and more than 30% of civilian airships have it. With this rescue capsule configured, I can't tell what level the airship was shot down. Layton paused, then continued, but one thing is certain, this rescue capsule came from a civilian aircraft ship. If it is a warship, the armed drop cabin is usually used directly as a rescue cabin. It's not necessarily the rescue capsule of the empty ship at this time. Valentina suddenly spoke. The Major told me that some ground vehicles operating in dangerous areas will install modified rescue capsules. It serves as a cockpit. If an accident occurs, the ejection device can directly launch the entire rescue capsule, which can greatly increase the driver's chance of survival. There seems to be such a thing, and this mining area seems to meet the conditions of a dangerous operating zone. Leighton muttered in a low voice. When the Hound heard this, he immediately shouted back angrily, "Then why didn't you think of it just now? How dare you talk to me? This is a one-size-fits-all matter. Although some people have done this before, such modified vehicles are too rare. The main problem is the cost-effectiveness. An MSA-02C rescue capsule does not count. Those bits and pieces of supporting equipment, just for a bare cabin, the official price is more than 9 million credits. And the Rhinoceros MK all-terrain armored patrol vehicle we found earlier, the top version plus the 4 spare tracks cost no more than 2 million points. If there is such a special need, why not just use the money to buy the rescue cabin to customize a special vehicle with better performance and a built-in escape device? It is a complete waste to install this kind of rescue capsule on an ordinary vehicle, Leighton defended with a look of injustice. Not many normal people can do such stupid things, and it can only be done in emergencies. That's why we use this method as an emergency. Then this is the kind of emergency you mentioned, Kaylan said solemnly. Moreover, the person who is qualified to escape on this modified vehicle should be an important role. Who knows? Maybe they robbed the car and escaped. Hound curled his lips and said, "The orange signal light is flashing slower and slower. It is estimated that the person inside only has half a breath left. He needs to save others. Then hurry up." Leighton controlled the drone and circled around the outer edge of the squeeze zone. After confirming that there were no heretical sects or exiles ambushing around, everyone walked out of the hiding place and came to the edge of the squeeze zone. "Let me do it," Zwilligita volunteered. "I will save people." Kaylan grabbed his belt, shook his head and said, "Don't worry, the geological structure of the compression zone is very unstable. Have you noticed those wrinkles and cracks? I saw it. I just need to be careful and avoid them," Zwilligita said. "The rock formations in the entire compression zone are not evenly stressed. Those places that appear to be complete and solid may be broken into pieces like cinders underneath. The moment you step on it, you will fall directly into the ground and it will be too late to save you." As Kaylan spoke, he took out a steel cable from his backpack and connected one end of the steel cable to Zwilligita's body. The barrel shaft and runner at the other end were made of a steel drill more than half a meter long. Firmly fixed on the ground, this is a safety rope. After you enter the squeeze zone, once you feel that the ground under your feet is loose, lie directly on the ground to increase the stress area, and we will find a way to remove you pulled back. If this equipment wasn't too heavy, I would have used a drone to carry you over," Leighton said. He took out another ring of steel cables and handed one end to Zwilligita. "There are lifting rings on both sides of the door of the MSA-02C rescue cabin. Each lifting ring is marked with a number. You put the steel cable through it in order according to the number. After threading it into a circle, buckle the head of the steel cable. Even if it's done." "Okay, I understand." Zwilligita grabbed the steel rope, took a deep breath, and slowly walked into the squeeze zone. Because they are not sure whether the survivors in the rescue cabin are wearing protective clothing, Kaylan and his team's plan is to directly recover the entire rescue cabin. Otherwise, even if the survivors are in good condition, the environment outside the rescue cabin will be high temperature, hypoxic, full of radiation, and the toxic gas environment was enough to kill him. Zelig diagram. Pay attention to the scan I shared with you, which is the window in the upper right corner of your heads-up display. The ultrasonic waves emitted by the drone will automatically analyze the surrounding address structure. You should pay attention to those red and orange areas. Don't get close, Leighton said in the team's communication leather computer. In addition, green does not necessarily mean it is absolutely safe, so be careful. Yes, Zwilligita responded, walking cautiously towards the depths of the squeeze zone. If he said he wasn't nervous, he would be lying. After walking less than 30 meters, his forehead there were already beads of sweat oozing out. When responding to his teammates' instructions, he didn't even dare to make small movements like nodding or raising his hands, and even his breathing became cautious. If it weren't for the bravery inherited from generations in his blood that was still supporting his body, I'm afraid even his calves would be weak now. People who have never stepped into a squeeze zone cannot understand this feeling. As Kaylan said, many seemingly solid grounds have already been crushed into powder. If you step on it, it was like stepping on soft sand. Every time Zwilligito set foot, he had to test it several times to make sure that there was really a complete rock underneath before he dared to step on it. Walking all the way, a long series of intermittent footprints were left along the way. This was still just the outer edge of the squeeze zone. The further in, the situation would only become more dangerous. Finally, he reached the first fold. The height of this fold is 1.5 meters, and its length traverses most of the squeeze zone. To reach the location of the rescue capsule, Zwilligito must climb over this wavy fold full of cracks. It may be difficult for some people to imagine this kind of wrinkled appearance. Then you can try to take 2 pieces of toast bread, or a softer sponge cake, stick the edges of the 2 pieces of bread or cake together, and then squeeze hard towards the middle. The shape of the joint between the 2 pieces of bread is almost the general appearance of the squeeze strip. It's just that the thing being squeezed has been changed from soft bread to hard rock slabs. Even the bread will crack and scatter a lot of crumbs. You can naturally imagine what will happen to the rock formations. The top of the fold was torn apart at an angle perpendicular to the direction of the collision. Fortunately, the rock at the bottom was pushed up by huge force, so that an insurmountable rift did not appear here. Zwilligito glanced looking at the ultrasonic scan from the drone. Most of the folds were red and orange. Only the space less than 3 meters wide directly in front of him was green. Green places are not necessarily safe. Layton's words were still echoing in his ears. Especially this kind of green area sandwiched between large red and orange areas, like an island teetering in the center of a whirlpool. Likewise, raging waves are constantly scouring the base of this isolated island. No one knows when this isolated island will fall apart and be sucked into a bottomless whirlpool. But there is only one road in front of Zwilligito. If he chooses to take a detour, he will have to pass through more dangerous places. What's more, there is not much time left for the survivors in the rescue cabin. If a dead person is rescued, this adventure will become meaningless. Zwilligito gritted his teeth, clenched his hands hard twice, and began to climb toward the top of the fold. The sharp steel claws popped out from the wrists of the power armor and cut into the rock easily. These devices can help Zwilligito stabilize his body, but they will also cause secondary damage to the rock. He doesn't even dare to test the stability of the steel claws. It may be able to support the first force, but the second time, the third time, maybe the entire rock will collapse instantly, erasing the only green area. Zwilligito couldn't help but speed up. Fortunately, this fold was a blessing, and nothing unexpected happened. He quickly climbed to the top of the fold. But the moment he stood on the top of the folded ridge, the rocks under his feet collapsed like crispy cookies. Zwilligito staggered and quickly lay down, pressing his whole body against the on top of the rocks. Kaylan and others standing far away couldn't help but hold their breath. First, don't pull me, the rock formation seems to be fine. I made a mistake just now, I shouldn't have stood up. Zwilligito's intermittent voice came from the team communication channel. He said, while sitting up on hands and feet, riding on the top of the folded ridge. He turned his head with some fear, and saw a landslide 1 palm wide and 10 centimeters long appearing where he had just stepped. The black rocks turned into debris and rolled down the slope. Fortunately, the range did not expand, nor did the fold ridges collapse. Everyone watching from a distance breathed a sigh of relief. Damn, I was scared to death, the hound cursed and said. Fortunately, the Mongolian guy is lucky. I was ready to pull the tightrope just now. Layton said, still hunched over and holding the shaft tightly. There are no problems for the time being. I'm moving on. Zwilligito adjusted his breathing, then climbed down to the other side of the fold and disappeared from the sight of Kaylan and others. Climbing down is much easier than climbing up. The only thing you need to pay attention to is whether the ground where you land is solid. Because Swilajito adopts a half-climbing and half-sliding posture with its back against the folded slope, so even if you step on it, even if it is empty, the body will not lose balance. Soon, he climbed over 3 more folds in the same way. Now, there was only the last fold between him and the rescue capsule. But Swilajito could no longer move forward. The drone scan showed that the entire fold was a high-risk red zone, and there was no green window for people to pass. This is also clearly reflected in the appearance of the fold. The top of the fold is as pitted as if it had been gnawed by a dog, and sulfur-containing gas is constantly coming out of the gaps and holes. This means, this fold is hollow and filled with large and small gas channels. Like a fluffy sponge cake full of air holes. P.S. The bone puncture report is out, the MRD is still negative, and I can survive for another half a year. Thank you everyone for your concern. I myself am relieved. In addition, although the bone puncture result is good, I have had a bad cold in the past 2 days. I'm feeling groggy, and there may be a lot of typos. Please help me catch the bugs. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 453. Swilajito could see the drone's scan, and Kaylan and others behind him could also see it. Humming, it's all red zone, there's no safe place to stay. Layton stared, holding the drone's joystick tightly in his hand, swinging back and forth in this fold, but the results of every scan are the same. The entire fold zone is a dazzling bright red. This means that this area may collapse at any time. Otherwise, let's give up the hound's side. Even if the person in the rescue cabin is rescued, he may not be able to be saved. It's not worth taking the risk for a half-dead person. We've come this far, and I'm not willing to give up, Swilajito said with heavy breaths. Although the power armor served as an aid, he climbed over 4 folds in a row and was still in a state of high mental stress. The physical exertion is extremely terrifying. Even this strong Mongolian man had to stop and give himself a shot of stimulant and a booster. I want to try. Swilajito's breathing became slightly more stable. The rescue cabin is already so close to me, there is no reason to turn back now. Layton, tighten the cable and be ready to save people at any time, Kaylan said. I know, I kept pulling, and I let it out centimeter by centimeter, Layton said nervously, his arms tightly holding the rotating shaft wrapped with steel cables, which was as high as the thickness of a thumb. The strong steel cable was stretched straight. If Swilajito lost his footing and fell into the crevice, this would be his only hope of survival. Swilajito bent down, arched his body and began to touch forward. He first put his hands on the sides of the folds, and after making sure that the part in contact was enough to support his own weight, he then shifted his body's center of gravity little by little. Okay, there's no problem here, he seemed to be saying to Kaylan and the others, but also seemed to be talking to himself. Next step. The steel claws of both hands popped out and cut into the rock. Swilajito began to gradually increase the strength on his arms. At the same time, he raised his right leg and kicked the hooks of his toes into the slope. It took him a full 5 minutes just to climb 1 step. The flashing frequency of the orange signal light in the rescue cabin has changed to once every 3 seconds. The condition of the survivors is already very critical, but no one dares to tell Swilajito, no one dares to rush him, for fear that he will mistakes occur due to anxiety. After another 20 minutes, Swilajito finally fixed the steel claws on the top of the wrinkled spine. As long as he used the force to drag his body up, he would basically have successfully climbed over. But at this moment, a crisp click sound came from his ears. Swilajito froze immediately. He felt as if his heartbeat had missed a beat. His whole body hung there, not daring to move. He even held his breath. Is it an illusion? He waited for almost 5 seconds, but nothing happened. It must be an illusion. Swilajito calmed down and slightly increased the power on the steel claw. Ka 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 ka. This time, a series of clear cracking sounds sounded inside the folds, which also made him sure that the sound he just heard was not an illusion, but he was too late to jump off the folds, and the top of the folds collapsed instantly. It broke, and the steel claws originally fixed on it were decoupled, and he completely lost the place to draw strength. Crash dash. The sound of the collision between gravels was a mess, and Zwilligita felt that his mind went blank. A strong airflow spurted out from below. He knew that the ground under his feet had completely collapsed, and this airflow was not enough. Hold his body, and soon he will fall into the magma. Retract, Kaylan yelled hoarsely. Layton turned the spool with all his strength, the steel cable was retracted crazily, and the ground was constantly breaking. Zwilligita was always hanging on the edge of the cliff. Why? Can't even climb up there. Keep retracting, Kaylan shouted, as long as the speed of retracting the steel cable can exceed the speed of the ground collapse, we can pull him back. I know. This is already the fastest speed. The wheel axles are starting to get hot. We can't go faster, Layton shouted with red eyes. The mechanical arm grasped the handle of the rotating shaft and kept turning. The inside of the rotating shaft squeaked. The friction sound of squeaking is endless. You must leave here immediately, I don't know when. Iabra also ran over, the entire compression zone has begun to collapse, and there is no chance that the outer areas will also fall into the magma. We will not give up on our teammates. Kaylan glanced at her and turned his head back. He was already prepared to snatch Zwilligita back even if he was forced to start and stop. The hound's answer was even more straightforward. What kind of fart did you fart? Get out of here. 100 meters, 50 meters, under the traction of the steel cable, the distance between Zwilligita and Kaylan became smaller and smaller, and the entire squeeze zone was like dominoes being toppled, constantly collapse, falling. If you turn your attention to the ultrasonic scanning image of the drone at this time, you will find that the remaining green areas of the entire compression zone are rapidly turning orange, and then from orange to red. 1,000-mile dike breaks into ant nests, not to mention that this squeeze zone is full of ant nests. From the perspective of Kaylan and the others, they could no longer see Zwilligita. They could only see the steel cable racing against the collapsed ground. Those folds collapsed one after another, rubble rumbled down the cliff, and the cracks on the ground spread and expanded rapidly toward the outside. Kaylan felt as if he could hear the sound of lava flowing underneath. Finally, less than 10 meters away from Kaylan and the others, the trend of ground collapse finally stopped, and Layton also pulled Zwilligita, who was hanging on the other end of the steel cable, from the cliff with a strong tug. The bottom was lifted up. Only then did everyone notice that Zwilligita's hands were holding onto the rescue capsule. You don't want to die? You just kept holding onto this thing and didn't let go. Seeing this scene, the hound instantly cursed. Until his feet stepped on the solid ground, Zwilligita's body was still in a tense state. He tightly grasped the ring on the rescue cabin with both hands, and how could his bent knees and calves, neither can return to an upright position. Relax, relax. Ivan rushed to his side immediately. He just touched it through the power armor and knew the problem. My legs seem cramped, but I don't know why, I can't control it. Zwilligita said tremblingly. Well, I know, the muscle spasms are so severe that I have to give you a shot of relaxant, but the side effect is that you will have to rely on power armor to drive your legs for the next 20 minutes. Fine. Ivan took out 2 syringes from the medical kit, one for analgesics and one for muscle relaxants. He opened a flap on Zwilligita's leg armor and inserted the needle into the emergency injection hole reserved on the armor. Inside, with the injection of the medicinal solution, Zwilligita's pale face softened slightly. He held onto the rescue cabin, sat down slowly, and began to breathe heavily. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 454. How did you catch the rescue capsule? I thought the rescue operation failed just now. Iabrea stood aside and asked, a little embarrassed. The rescue capsule is at the other end of the fold. When the fold collapsed, my whole body fell down with the gravel. I reached out to fish it out and just grabbed the ring of the rescue capsule. Zhou replied, it seems, I'm pretty lucky. Well, you big-headed devil, the hound raised his leg and kicked Zhualajitu on the back. You almost accompanied the guy in this thing to meet the king of hell, you know? Who believes in luck? Whoever suffers should give up decisively if you encounter this situation next time. Then at least I got the life capsule back this time, right? After the fear subsided, Zhualajitu's face returned to that honest smile, with a hint of excitement in his tone. Doctor, please leave me alone and save people quickly. If the people in the rescue cabin die, it will be a big loss. There is no way to rescue here. If you open the rescue capsule now, the people inside will definitely die. Ivan shook his head. I need a relatively closed environment, at least to separate the survivors from the harsh environment outside. The cabin of that truck, Kaylan said, I just checked and the air conditioning and oxygen supply systems in the cab are not broken. We just need to repair the cracks in the insulation layer, but the space is a little small. That's enough. Ivan nodded. I'll fix it. You guys bring the rescue capsule over. Hearing what Kaylan said, Layton jumped up from the ground in a hurry and ran towards the truck. Old dog, hold on to Zhualajitu, Ivan, let's take the rescue capsule over. After Kaylan finished speaking, he and Ivan picked up the rescue capsule. Although this thing weighs a ton, but with the power of the power armor, it is still very easy to lift it up. On the other side, Layton had already moved the two bodies out of the truck cab, and then used an extremely violent method to dismantle all the equipment in the cockpit that had nothing to do with temperature control and oxygen supply, leaving only a flat bed. Seats. As for the cracks outside the cockpit and the windows that cannot be completely closed due to deformation, they are all sealed with repair tape. This sealing method is not complete and can last for a few hours at most, and the temperature inside the cabin will slowly rise. To the extent that it is similar to the outside world, but this is the limit of what they can do. The worst case scenario is that after the rescue operation is completed, the person is stuffed back into the rescue cabin. Ivan first got into the car with the medical kit, and then Kaylan and Layton pushed the rescue cabin upright, pressing the hatch of the rescue cabin and the door of the car closely together, and then Ivan pulled the survivors out of the rescue cabin from the inside. Drag it out of the cabin. Through the glass car window, Kaylan noticed that this was a yellow man about 40 years old. He was wearing a dirty white coat, his eyes and lips were closed, his face was pale, and his hair on one side and shoulders there were burn marks on his clothes, and he was holding a pistol tightly in his right hand with his finger on the trigger. Fortunately, the safety of the pistol was turned off. Otherwise, he would have just used this golden finger to snatch back the rescue cabin. In the process, the gun had already gone off countless times. Multiple fractures in the body, multiple visceral ruptures, large-scale internal bleeding, multiple organ failure, the situation is very bad. I can only say that I will try my best, Ivan said in the team channel after checking the survivors. What are the chances of being rescued? Kaylan asked. No more than 10%. Then if I need to help him regain consciousness now, without considering anything else, how sure are you? Kaylan asked again. More than 50%. Ivan raised his head and looked at Kaylan. You try to save him first. If nothing can be done, you know what to do, Kaylan said. His meaning was very clear. Even if this person is really hopeless, at least he must be vomited before he dies. Some useful information, although this is very inhumane, it is also a helpless move under special circumstances. What's more, judging from the man's clothes and the rescue cabin, Kaylan felt that this survivor had a high chance of knowing the inside story of the earthquake. I know. Yvonne nodded, took out a large scalpel, cut open the survivor's clothes, and began to rescue. At this time, Ayabri also walked to the car window. She held a delicate camera in her hand and pointed it at the survivor's face through the car window. Are you scanning his facial features? Well, if he is a researcher stationed at the base, then his information will be in the archives of the Security Bureau. Aya just finished speaking, and with a soft beep, the survivor's information was displayed on the screen. Park Sang-woo, age 37, male, geologist, materials scientist, former researcher at Academia Sinica. Park Sang-woo? Doesn't this name sound like a stick? Hound interjected. Well, the ethnicity column does indeed say Koreans. Aya nodded. The main research results are. Wait a minute, you just said he was a former researcher at Academia Sinica. But, I remember the identity of the researcher. Isn't it tenure track? Kaylan interrupted her again. That's because, this Park Sang-woo, he is a returner, Aya said. Returnee? Kaylan and Hound were both slightly startled. This word is not common, but such people do exist. Returnees, as the name suggests, are people who have returned to their place of origin as ARC citizens. And what kind of people can become ARC citizens again? Naturally only those who have been exiled to the wilderness. However, the requirements for returnees are very strict. They must make a huge contribution or value to ARC. For safety reasons, the identity of each returnee is kept confidential, and only the Security Bureau can check it. To their previous files. In the past 50 years, the number of exiles may be tens of thousands, but the number of returnees can probably be counted on one hand. This guy is actually a returnee. Hound couldn't help but take another look at the survivors in the carriage. What did he commit? And for what reason did he regain his citizenship? P.S. Thanks to Yelua Sheng. For the reward of 4,500 starting coins, thank you to Original Sin Fury for the reward of 500 starting coins, thank you to White Floating Monster for the reward of 288 starting coins for never recharging. PPS Goldfinger refers to the act of inserting your finger into the trigger guard of a firearm when it is not firing, or placing your finger directly on the trigger. This kind of behavior can easily cause firearms to misfire. I heard that in the US military, if you are found cheating 3 times, you will be expelled from the military. I don't know if it is true or false. Is there anyone who knows more about this and can explain it here? Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 455. 6 years ago, Park Sang-woo embezzled 160 million credits from research funds, used his power to threaten subordinates, accepted bribes, and secretly sold the research results of the institute to private organizations. He was originally going to be sentenced to death, but because most of the embezzled money was recovered and the sentence was commuted to exile, Ayabri read. Then how did this guy come back? Hound asked, but having said that, it's quite surprising that such a weak researcher can survive in the wilderness. According to what he said, on the second day of his exile, he was discovered by people from the heretic sect and brought back to the settlement. Aya said, because of his talent, the people from the heretic sect did not kill him. Even though he was killed, he was not treated as an ordinary slave. Within a month, he joined the heretical sect and became the lowest member of the cult. This guy is still a member of a heretical sect. Then, we can still bring him back. The Hound shouted in surprise, wait a minute, could it be that this guy has abandoned the dark side and turned to the bright side? Did he bring back any important information that made the higher UPS agree to let him return? Park Sang-woo was captured by us during the clearing of an exile settlement by field troops 2 years ago. He submitted an application for naturalization to ARC, which was approved a week later, and was immediately assigned to work in the molten mine. To this day Aya continued reading. It's only been a week. When did the efficiency of those offices become so high? What did this guy do to make the people above him value him so much? Hound asked puzzledly. It's not written in the file. Regarding the content of the naturalization application, it's all blank. Aya turned the screen to Kaylan and Hound. Just as she said, there was no mention of this matter in Park Sang-woo's file. Impossible. If he could return home so easily, then he wouldn't have been exiled in the first place, Hound said flatly. Is it possible that this part of the file is not open to you because your authority level, team leader Bria, is too low? Kaylan suddenly asked. My authority level should be the highest among the reconnaissance team. If I can't check it, then the same goes for everyone else, Aya said. That's not necessarily true, Kaylan shook his head. Let me try. You. This is the archives of the Security Bureau. How could you have permission to view it? Aya frowned slightly and looked at Kaylan with some confusion. It doesn't matter if you give it a try. Kaylan extended his hand to her. Besides, don't forget that I am the commander of this operation. The commander's intelligence authority will of course be higher than that of his subordinates. Kaylan took the tablet from Aya's hand, then pointed the camera at his eyes and scanned in his iris data. The file on the screen suddenly refreshed, and a line of words appeared in the originally blank space. Have you seen it? Don't think. Kaylan got stuck mid-sentence because he found that the line of text that was refreshed read, this part of the file requires the highest level of permission to view. Ian's authority level is indeed higher than Ayabria's, but the higher authority only lets him know that such a file does exist, and that it requires the highest level of authority to view it. It seems that I have obtained some useful information, but in fact it is useless. You can guess with your heels that Park Sang-woo's return to ARC must have shown his value in front of ARC senior management. The existing file is so short that it must be an abridged version. Ha 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 ha. The Hound, who was watching on the side, simply squatted on the ground with laughter. I thought it was a slap in the face plot, but it turned out that I couldn't show off and got hummed instead. Ha 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 ha. But at least I'm right. My authority is still higher than that of team leader Brea, although not much higher. Kaylan curled his lips. By the way, this requires the highest level of authority to view, and only you can view it. The director of the Security Bureau needs to personally take action, right? In Ian's view, the highest authority should refer to the highest authority within the Security Bureau, and existence like the Immortal Crew Association belongs to the outsider level. Literally speaking, only the director himself should be able to see it. Ayabria nodded. Hey, good guy, it seems that this stick involves top secrets. No wonder the citizenship application will be approved so quickly, Hound sighed. But the issue of permission level is not actually a problem. Kaylan said, taking out a portable computer with a thick explosion-proof shell from his backpack, and using a data cable to connect the computer to the Security Bureau. The agent personal terminal, the tablet that Aya used to check files, was connected together. What are you going to do? Looking at Ian's actions, Ayabria suddenly had a bad feeling. No need to ask, of course it is an intrusion into the archives of the Security Bureau. Although there is no way to connect to the network, those files have been copied into this terminal in advance. As long as the information exists, I will have a way to get them. Dig it out, Kaylan said, already typing quickly on the keyboard. Wait, it's illegal for you to do this. Aya subconsciously wanted to stop Ian's behavior. Special circumstances, special treatment. If I can get in touch with ARC, I believe your director will definitely lend me his authority. After all, the life and death of researcher Park Sang-woo is unknown now. We have more information about the cause of the earthquake and the current situation of the base. I know nothing about it, and the most important thing is that I am almost certain that Park Sang-woo is inevitably connected with the earthquake. If he is still unwilling to hand over this information to us under this situation, then I highly doubt this. Could the director be the mole planted by the heretical sect in the top management of ARC? Kaylan, your kid's remarks are too dangerous. Do you really dare to say them? When Kaylan said the last words, even the Hound, who had always despised authority, was shocked, and the mole was directly putting a hat on the head of the director of the Security Bureau. I am afraid that not many people have the courage to say this, let alone in front of a special agent team leader of the Security Bureau. You. Aya's face suddenly turned pale. She glared at Kaylan, wanting to refute his remarks, but found that she couldn't seem to find any suitable reason. What this guy said is right, special treatment will be given under special circumstances. In the current situation, the Security Bureau should not hide this vital information from them. But, if you forcefully invade the terminal, Aya continued, if discovered by the security program, the self-destruction program will be activated. Each personal terminal is equipped with 3 pieces of compressed crystallized explosives. If the machine is destroyed, even you will be affected by the explosion. Crystal explosives? Can this thing be used as a grenade in times of crisis? Kaylan said half-jokingly, but the speed of typing on the keyboard under his hands did not slow down at all. I ask you to stop the invasion immediately. Aya couldn't help but raise her voice. I order myself in the name of Commander to continue the invasion, Kaylan replied without raising his head. Are you crazy? If the machine self-destructs, at this distance, even if you are wearing power armor, you will be seriously injured, Aya shouted at Kaylan, and tried to take the personal terminal back from Ian's hand. In the name of the Commander, I order you, Aya Brita, leader of the 3rd Field Agent Team of DAS, to stand still and don't move, Kaylan shouted sharply. You are simply unreasonable, Aya glared at Kaylan, not knowing whether to obey this order or rush forward to seize the personal terminal. But at this moment, Kaylan suddenly opened the back cover of his personal terminal, and with a pair of tweezers, he took out 3 compressed crystallized explosives that looked like chewing gum and were wrapped in silver aluminum foil from the gap in the chip. Each of these 3 pieces of explosives has a red wire and a green wire connected to the end. Kaylan raised his head and glanced at Aya, speaking of which, should we cut the green wire first or the red wire first? Or should we cut them together? Can't cut? Can't cut any of them. If any one of the threads is cut, it will detonate immediately, just when Aya stopped Kaylan. Kaylan had already used these 3 pieces of explosives that looked like chewing gum. It was torn off. The explosion did not occur. What's going on? Maybe you encountered a defective dumb bomb, right? Kaylan threw 3 compressed crystal explosives to Aya, who quickly bent down to catch it with his hands, fearing that the thing would be affected by some impact. Don't worry, without the corresponding pulse signal, this thing cannot be exploded. It is safer than C4 plastic explosives, Kaylan said. This kind of compressed crystallized explosive is not made by humans, but is a product of the Alpha civilization. Its essence is an explosive device that uses a crystal circuit structure chip as a detonator and high-quality energy crystals to be suppressed and used as a charge. Although humans cannot replicate this crystalline explosive, they can use pulse signals to activate the crystal circuit structure and detonate it. Why didn't it explode? Aya looked at Kaylan in confusion, and then at the 3 pieces of crystallized explosives lying in the palm of her hand. Because I deleted the terminal self-destruct program and modified the firewall's recognition logic. If this thing was originally a fierce woman wearing a metal chastity belt with explosives stuffed in her pants, then it is now a naked, people can be as slutty as they want. At this point, Kaylan seemed to feel that this metaphor was a bit inappropriate, so he simply changed the topic. In short, my invasion was successful. You succeeded in the invasion? How is this possible? Aya didn't care about Ian's strange metaphors. She looked straight at the terminal and murmured. After all, there is no internet connection here, and security measures cannot be updated in real time. Taking advantage of this vulnerability, I directly forged a highest privilege account and entered the background of the system openly. The verification frequency of your system is once every 0.05 seconds. In other words, within 0.05 seconds, I will be found to be a counterfeit, and thus be detected by the security system, and then detonate the explosive. Kaylan paused and then said, but the problem is that there is no network, and there is no way to compare the highest authority account I forged with online data in real time. In other words, these 0.05 seconds will never pass. This is a very fatal problem. If a terminal falls into the hands of a bad person, as long as that person blocks the network signal, things will be in trouble. But, even if you want to forge an account with the highest authority, you still need the biometric identification data of our director. Without this, you can't even get in through the first door, Aya said. I don't know why. With my authority, the data that I can call include exactly these things. There is even a table that records the menstrual periods of all female agents. Kaylan said, let's just say, actually, my authority is quite high. This is most likely a little backdoor that the undead crew will leave for him, Kaylan thought in his heart. Stop talking about this, no one is interested in the menstrual period of female agents. Hurry up and find Park Sang-woo's complete file. Hound urged from the side. Don't worry, I'm searching, there are so many documents, it has to take some time. K. Ian's words were stuck for the second time, because he discovered that the file they saw before was that of Park Sang-woo in the Security Bureau complete profile in. As for the confidential information involved in his naturalization application, there is no data retained in the archives at all. Damn it, they didn't even enter those things into the digital archive. Kaylan was stunned for a long time before he could say this. He finally understood that the highest authority just now did not refer to the highest authority within the Security Bureau that only belonged to the director, but the highest authority of the Immortal Crew Association for all Ark, all mankind. Kaylan suddenly felt like he had been tricked. This means that even the Security Bureau has no right to know the secrets Park Sang-woo involves, Hound said in astonishment. Then besides the Security Bureau, who else is qualified to know? P.S. Thanks to Sanchezan for the 100,000 starting coins. Congratulations to the boss for becoming the 7th leader of this book. Spread flowers. P.P.S. Thank you to Deep Blue Fog City for the 200 starting coins, thank you to Mikey Uren for the 100 starting coins. P.P.P.S. In view of the suggestions from book friends in the group, and the fact that the author himself is a loser in naming, he now needs to recruit a large number of supporting actors. The number of roles is not yet certain, it may be used as a background board, or there may be no cannon fodder for a single line, or it may be extremely low level. There is a probability that he will join the protagonist group. If you want to sign up, you can join the book club group. The group number is on the book details page of the Kidian app. Expand the introduction and click on the one-click group at the bottom. You only need 500 fan points to apply. In addition, I hope everyone will try to choose a more normal name when registering. Long Aotian, Mary Sue, and Wen Qingbing style actors will be passed directly. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, and Chen-Mi San. Chapter 456. Could it be that, the names of relevant documents have been changed? Aya said, in order to keep it confidential, some information will be processed in this way. It is true that this possibility cannot be ruled out. Kaylan nodded. I'll try searching with keywords. Keyword search is useless, Aya said to him again. The purpose of renaming the file is to prevent people from easily searching for it, so all the keywords related to specific names and locations will be replaced with code names. If you just searching for files containing keywords will exclude the real target from the search results. Then the only clue is time. Kaylan sighed and searched all the newly created files from the time when Park Sang-woo was captured by the field troops until his application for naturalization was approved and he was assigned to work in the molten mine. Out. This is simply a lethal dose. Layton came over, glanced at the screen Kaylan was facing, and immediately turned his head away with a grimace. Even though this period was only less than half a month, but there are as many as 1,729 new files in the Security Bureau's archives, and without being able to determine more keywords, Kaylan has no way to further narrow the scope of the search. Each of these 1729 files is possible. It's what they're looking for. You look for it slowly, and I'll go see how the stick is doing. Seeing this vast amount of documents, Hound suddenly felt like his head was getting bigger. He stood up without interest and patted Kaylan on the shoulder. And then walked to the truck. At this time, Yvonne had already cut open Park Sang-woo's abdominal cavity. Park Sang-woo's internal bleeding was so severe that surgery had to be used to stop it, otherwise no matter how much plasma he was given, it would not help. Yvonne used the inner side of his wrist to hold several hemostatic forceps that were inserted into the injured person's body, while constantly using tweezers and scalpels to cut off the necrotic tissue and take it out of the body. Logically speaking, for this level of surgery, at least there should be more than 2 deputies to assist, but the space in the carriage can no longer accommodate more people, and Yvonne can only treat himself as 3 people. Fortunately, his mechanical prosthetic limb has been specially modified. The 4 mini robotic arms separated from the forearm can easily complete tasks such as picking up tools and delivering gauze, barely allowing Yvonne to complete this task by himself. Taiwan Rescue Surgery. The situation is not optimistic, Yvonne said on the team communication channel while performing the operation. He has irreversible damage to many of his organs. Even if the bleeding is stopped, he will not be able to last long. This kind of injury can be cured by replacing artificial organs or sending it to a medical cabin for human repair, but we are unable to do these now. Is there any way to hang his life? Kaylan asked immediately. Yes, giving him the only extracorporeal life support system, Note 1, we brought into the mining area should allow him to survive for a week. Yvonne paused and continued, but it is possible to do so. It will cause our people to lose a precious rescue opportunity. With our current conditions, once it is turned on, there is no way to clean it and replace it with others, and those consumables are only enough for a week. Yvonne still had half a sentence left unsaid. If Park Sang-woo cannot be sent out of the molten mine within a week, he will still die. Let's not talk about this first, let him use the machine, Kaylan said. He can't die, at least not now. The bulky device was quickly stuffed into the car, and the already tight space suddenly became even tighter. Although this is already a portable version of an extracorporeal life support device, its size should not be underestimated. After all, the conventional version of this thing requires a room of more than 10 square meters to fully accommodate it. Yvonne connected the catheters of different thicknesses to Park Sang-woo's blood vessels and trachea one by one. Amidst the soft sound of the centrifugal pump motor, the deep red venous blood flowed into the transparent polymer catheter. When the blood was invisible to the naked eye, when the inside of the observed machine came out, it had turned into bright red arterial blood, which was then pumped into Park Sang-woo's body. Kaylan, be mentally prepared, Yvonne whispered while operating the machine. His brain has been deprived of oxygen for some time. You have also studied medicine. You should know that this will cause harm to his brain. What impact? Even if he can wake up, it's not necessarily. I know that there is a possibility of epilepsy, dementia, speech impediment, and even amnesia, but these are all things that happen with probability. I think this guy is still worthy of our gamble. When Kaylan spoke, his eyes and his hand never stopped at all. The light of the screen reflected on his helmet visor, and densely packed characters scrolled rapidly. The scope of these 1729 newly created files is really too wide, from the cleanup report of heretical sex strongholds to the investigation results of food hygiene problems of a certain black-hearted enterprise, from the detection process of the case of the headless man's corpse in the sewage pipe to the selection process of a certain official. XP preference. When I was a mistress, the work that the agents of the Security Bureau have to do almost covers a series of occupations such as special forces in the old era, intelligence personnel of the Secret Service, supervision, police, urban management, etc. Their management projects are numerous and their functional structures are huge. It was so complicated that Kaylan, who learned the true face of this group for the first time, couldn't help but be a little speechless. It was hard for him to imagine a group of security agents in black and gray combat uniforms raiding an illegal food processing factory. Logically speaking, shouldn't this kind of thing be left to the garrison troops and security managers? By the way, Leader Britta, do your security bureau agents also work part-time as food quality inspectors? What? Britta looked at Kaylan confused. I just saw an investigation report on the food hygiene issues of XX company. Is this report wrong? Is this kind of thing your responsibility? Oh, I know about this, but it's not our group who is on duty. I don't know the details. I heard that it was directly assigned by the superior, I replied. Directly assigned by superiors? Could it be that the child of a certain leader of the Security Bureau accidentally ate such low-quality food and then suffered from diarrhea? When his father was so angry, he directly bypassed the garrison troops and the Public Security Bureau and sent a team of agents to investigate the incident. That's not right. This kind of abuse of authority by slamming the table may still happen in other organizations, but in the Security Bureau, no one would be stupid enough to do such a thing, right? Among those who can sit in high positions, which one is not the best among the best? Thinking of this, Kaylan suddenly felt that something was wrong with the food hygiene investigation report. He quickly scrolled back the page, found the report, and opened it again. He had only glanced at it a few times before, without checking it carefully. Now when he looked back, he noticed that this report document only had more than 13,000 words, but it had more than 70 pages. Based on the default font size, 13,000 words only lasts for more than 10 pages. Even if photos taken during the operation are inserted, there is no way it will be as long as 70 pages. There is something wrong with this report. Kaylan even suspected that this operation was just a cover. He quickly dragged the cursor and turned pages. The original report ended on page 12, and the rest were large blank pages. It couldn't possibly be because the report writer's body part was too majestic and he accidentally pressed the space bar on the keyboard, right? Finally, on the penultimate page, Kaylan saw a few lines of words. Part of the intelligence provided by Homecoming Bird has been verified. The first, third, fourth, and sixth items are true. The remaining two items need further verification. The existence of Yagonactor has been confirmed, the project has been formally established, and the executive personnel have been selected. It is currently impossible to rule out the threat of Yagonactor to the Ark. All relevant information is set as top secret, and it is prohibited to upload any project files to the digital archive. As for the last page, it is blank again. Kaylan is still in the highest authority state, so all the information he sees is the entire document, and there is no hidden content. If the content of these 3 sentences is true, it is not only in the archives of the Security Bureau, but even if the search scope is expanded to all the digital archives of ARC, he will not be able to find the relevant content. They have not uploaded it at all. How could he possibly find it? I seem to have found a new clue, Kaylan said. Immediately, Aya and Hound both came over and cast their eyes on the screen. At the time point of this document, the homing bird obviously refers to Park Sang-woo, who had just escaped from exile. He provided 6 pieces of information to ARC, 4 of which were verified, Kaylan said. Furthermore, this one or more of the 6 pieces of information should have mentioned this Yagonactor. The reason why he was sent to the Molten Mine area must be because he participated in the confidential project whose name was changed to an asterisk. I have never heard of such a project, Aya murmured. I have never heard of the name Yagonactor. Obviously, everything related to this project is highly confidential. The reason why such a record is left here should be that someone from your Security Bureau also participated in this project, but the specific content should only be the participation, you know it yourself, Kaylan said. Then what is this Yagonactor? No 2. Why does it sound a bit like the name of a god and demon from a legend? Hound asked, pointing to the second line of words. This name does come from the legends of the old era, but it is not a god or demon, but a kind of monster, Kaylan said. A Gunakota is a powerful creature that lives in volcanic areas. It is said that it lives in the plesiosaurs in the Jurassic Ocean are close relatives. This monster can use its fins to move freely through magma. Its sharp and hard mouthparts can cut through solidified volcanic rocks, and it can also eject hot lava flows from its mouth. Of course, what I'm talking about are descriptions in legends and stories. As for whether this kind of creature actually exists, we still need to, well, it's probably impossible to verify it now. Wait a minute. What do you mean by this Yago, who lives in a volcanic area and can move freely in magma? The hound raised his eyebrows, and his tone was a little higher. Than this molten mine area, isn't there everything underground? Is it magma? You mean, they found similar creatures underground in the molten mine area? Aya looked at the hound. Ordinary indigenous creatures will not attract this level of attention, and it is impossible to cause this level of earthquake, unless, this Yagothor, it is dash. A prehistoric breed. Kaylan continued what the hound said. A living prehistoric species lives in the molten mine. This is impossible. Aya shook her head repeatedly. If this inference is true, all people working in the molten mine will be evacuated immediately. The garrison base will also be. It is revoked. Then what if the purpose of the garrison base's existence is to study this Yagonactor? Kaylan asked rhetorically. Aya was speechless. If this Agunakota is really a prehistoric species, I even think that the secret of making nano-alloy is also related to it. Kaylan continued. Otherwise, why would the Alpha civilization mobilize so many people? With so many resources, how about building a smelting base on its habitat? Moreover, judging from the clues we have so far, the molten mine area seems to be the only place where nano-alloy is produced, so the relationship between this is very intriguing, Kaylan said slowly. I think this project is just seeking death. Damn, you living primitive people, these people are really crazy. The hound wanted to spit as he spoke, but he forgot that he was still wearing a helmet. As a result, the saliva was directly stuck on the inside of the mask. P.S. Thanks to Mo Shang for the 1,500 starting coins rewarded by Wen. Thank you Mr. Rabbit for the 100 starting coins. PPS Note 1 Extracorporeal Membrane Oxygenation System. The prototype of this device is a medical device called extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, also commonly known as ECMO, abbreviation for extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. The function of this device is to connect to the human body through a catheter, use a power pump and oxygenator to complete blood circulation and oxygenation outside the human body, and can replace the human heart and lung functions to a certain extent. During this epidemic, many severely ill patients relied on ECMO to survive the dangerous period and were then rescued. The extracorporeal life support system in this book can be regarded as an upgraded version of ECMO. As long as the injured person's brain is not damaged, even if the body part completely loses its proper function, he can still survive for a period of time relying on this device, provided that it is connected to extracorporeal life support. The brain was not dead when the device was created. Note 2, Yagonactor comes from the Monster Hunter series and is generally called Yanj Dragon by players. If you are interested in the specific information, you can search it on your own, so I won't go into details here. PPPS The cold got worse again, and then it also caused rhinitis and pharyngitis. The throat and nose were completely blocked, and I couldn't breathe. Those who felt uncomfortable had to go to the hospital tomorrow. No, I don't know if I need to be hospitalized, so I'm not sure if there will be an update tomorrow. I hope everyone can understand. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 457. There is another document that also has problems, Kaylan said suddenly. How to say? A resignation document. Kaylan turned his head and glanced at Aya, who was standing behind him. Team leader Brita, I wonder if you still remember a colleague named Maiden Natsuki, a former colleague. Natsuki Maeda, this name is somewhat impressive. If I remember correctly, she should be a member of the 6th Field Team, but I haven't had much interaction with her or spoken to her. On the same day that Park Sang-woo's naturalization application was approved, Maiden Natsuki took the initiative to submit her resignation to the Security Bureau on the grounds that she was under too much psychological pressure and was no longer suitable to serve as a front-line agent. Kaylan paused and continued, but just in her routine physical examination half a month ago, in her physical examination report, the mental health column was filled with good condition, and during this half month, let alone any high-intensity and cruel tasks. Well, you haven't even participated in field missions, so how could you suddenly become too psychologically stressed and overwhelmed? Could it be due to other reasons, or maybe he was forced to resign? People like us have a special status and rarely resign voluntarily, because even if we resign, it is actually difficult to return to ordinary people in life. Aya said with some uncertainty. This is already a document that can be viewed with the highest authority in the archives. If there is another hidden secret, there will definitely be another related document to explain it, but there is no such thing. It means that either this is the case, or there is a hidden secret in it. Even the highest authority of the Security Bureau has no right to view it. Tisk, the highest authority of your Security Bureau is really not up to the mark. Hearing this, Hound couldn't help but complain, is it possible that your director has been ignored? Do you think this retired agent is also related to this matter? Aya said. Natsuki Maeda, 26 years old, the last field mission recorded was 3.5 months ago. It was an unremarkable mission to clear out the exile stronghold. He did not make any outstanding achievements or make any serious mistakes. Her work ability, attitude, and related evaluations are all at an average level. If you exclude those days when she is away from field work, she is just like an ordinary civil servant working in a government agency, clocking in every day and working hard. During holidays, I occasionally go out to eat sukiyaki and tempura with my colleagues in the same group. My favorite restaurant is Mise Hamate in the Higashi 5th Ward. However, Kaylan continued, after she left her job, she went to 2 medical beauty institutions for microplastic surgery, and then with the help of a friend, she found a new job at the base in the molten mining area. I worked as a nurse at the base medical center, and registered my marriage to a man in 6 months. And this man happened to be the returnee who was assigned to the molten mine area, Mr. Park Sang-woo. Do you suspect that Natsuki Maeda was specially assigned to Park Sang-woo to monitor him? Aya said. However, our Security Bureau's office in the molten mine area has at least 30 permanent staff. There is no need for an extra agent. It's not necessarily surveillance, maybe it's a honey trap. In order to ensure Mr. Park Sang-woo's loyalty, the people above need to create some concerns for the returnee, a young and beautiful wife who loves him to death. It's a good option, and it would be even better if you add a few pairs of lovely children. After all, it is difficult to guarantee that a person who is alone and has no worries will not betray him again and sell information to the enemies of ARC. Kaylan said, the timing of this former Security Bureau agent's resignation is too coincidental. Coupled with such a far-fetched reason, it is difficult not to make people suspicious in this aspect. After all, a man who left the company because of psychological problems, how can an agent who has resigned from the Security Bureau go to a place like the molten mine to become a nurse? But the question is, if this was arranged by superiors, why can't we find relevant mission records? Aya said. Although she also felt that Ian's analysis was reasonable, she still retained a trace of doubt in her heart. That can only mean that Maiden Natsuki's superior is not the Security Bureau, but someone with higher authority than the Security Bureau. Kaylan said, the person who knows the details of the entire project. Then where is Natsuki Maiden now? Is she also in the molten mine area? Isn't she just like the others and has lost contact? Hound asked. No, her name is not on the missing list. She returned to ARC for maternity leave 2 months ago because she was pregnant. Kaylan said, she must also know something related to the project. But it's all in vain, we can't contact ARC now, let alone find this Natsuki maid, a hound complained, and what makes me speechless the most is, since the people above know that there is a prehistoric species named Yaga or Thor in the molten mine area, why do they send us to investigate the cause of the earthquake? And even if they send us here, even such critical information must be correct. What's the point of us hiding it? Are you trying to trick me to death? I don't know about that. Kaylan shrugged, with a look of helplessness on his face. The undead crew must know about this Yagunactor and the corresponding project, but they did not tell themselves these things. Is it because this is also part of the assessment content? Thinking of the behavior of all members of the immortal crew, the Riddler, Kaylan felt that this was not impossible. It's just, if the assessment content is really to investigate a living prehistoric species, isn't the difficulty a bit too high? Do these guys overestimate themselves, or are they planning to use the hands of the prehistoric species to get rid of themselves? No. This possibility is unlikely. If the undead crew wants to get rid of themselves, they have many ways to evaporate themselves quietly in this world, so there is no need to spend such efforts. However, it cannot be ruled out that some people in the undead crew want to die, but they must find a valid reason. Kaylan still remembers what the guy who invaded his computer said. He mentioned that Chiron, the proposal to let oneself join the undead crew, was approved by more than half of the members, but several members still opposed it. Maybe among the few people who voted against, someone wants to kill himself? P.S. Thanks to Qin Fengguo for the 500 starting coins. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 458. That would be troublesome. Kaylan couldn't help but frowned. As the saying goes, it is easy to hide from an open gun, but hard to guard against a hidden arrow. If there are really a few people in the undead crew who are determined not to let him live, even if he can complete the first assessment task, the following tasks will be different. The difficulty will only get higher and higher. It's not that Kaylan has never thought about reporting to the undead crew, but the problem is that this view comes entirely from his speculation, and there is no conclusive evidence to support it. Besides, since the assessment task can be sent to him, this means that other members also recognized the difficulty. This is the real situation of riding a tiger with difficulty. Just when Kaylan was sitting in front of the computer in a daze, Ivan's voice rang in the team communication channel. The survivor has regained consciousness. Park Sang-woo wakes up. Kaylan was stunned for a moment, stood up quickly, and walked quickly to the car. I saw that Park Sang-woo, who had only half a breath left, actually opened his eyes at this time. Although his eyes were still confused and his consciousness was probably still in a state of confusion, the vital signs monitoring device on the side could not be seen. Judging from the readings, his physical condition has returned to stability and has not deteriorated further. Can you wake up? Don't you just have a flashback? Hound said, leaning against the car window with a surprised look on his face. He once underwent body modification, Ivan explained. The level is not high, that is, level 2 to level 3, but it was a physical strengthening route, so he woke up so quickly. Physical enhancement is also a relatively popular transformation route. Unlike biochemical transformation and cyborg transformation that pursue destructive power and want to turn themselves into humanoid weapons, most people who choose physical enhancement do so to make themselves more capable. Gain stronger disease resistance, better physical fitness, and more comprehensive environmental adaptability. There are also some rich people who choose to strengthen their bodies, and their purposes are more pure. Some are to prolong life, and some are to strengthen their bodies, and some people even want to improve their combat effectiveness in certain aspects. Of course, they chose 1 to 2 levels of transformation surgeries that are relatively mature in technology and have a success rate that is close to 100%. As for the 8-level physical enhancement that Marshall received, the failure rate is even higher than that of biochemical transformation and prosthetic transformation. The most intuitive ability brought about by physical enhancement is the substantial enhancement of physical fitness. The reason why Park Sang-woo can wake up so quickly is precisely because his physical fitness is much stronger than that of ordinary people who have not undergone transformation. No wonder this guy has been able to wander around in the wilderness for several years. If it were an ordinary person, even if he could come back alive, he would probably have a lot of problems, Hound said with a smile. Kaylan glanced at Park Sang-woo's file again. As expected, there were records of the body modification surgeries he had undergone, a total of 4 surgeries, with an enhancement level of 2, but what left Kaylan speechless was that all the money the guy used for surgery was embezzled money. Because of the rich, low-level physical enhancement and genetic modification surgeries are much more expensive than the same low-level biochemical modification and prosthetic modification surgeries, and it is also difficult to apply for a loan. Ordinary people cannot. Several people can afford the high cost of surgery, including Park Sang-woo, who has just entered the institute for a few years. As for biochemical transformation and prosthetic transformation surgery, you can apply for special loans, because most of the people who carry out such transformations are in combat professions such as mercenaries and hunters. They usually sign a mortgage agreement and use the task remuneration to repay the surgery. Loans, even if unfortunately you die in the mission, the pensions issued by the government and organizations will be used first to offset the unpaid loans. Fortunately, this guy embezzled money and was willing to invest in his own body. Otherwise, by the time we found the rescue cabin, the light above would have been red, Layton said. I really don't know whether this kid is lucky or we are lucky, the Hound also sighed. Water, water, give me water. The first thing Park Sang-woo felt as he gradually regained consciousness was the burning pain in his throat. He wanted to try to raise his hand, but found that his body had completely lost consciousness. He could not even think about it. I couldn't even turn my head. He vaguely heard the unique beeping sound of the life monitoring equipment coming from his ears. He subconsciously thought that he had been rescued by ARC's search and rescue team, and he couldn't help but feel relieved. You cannot drink water in your current state. I will rehydrate you through intravenous drip, Yvonne said in an extremely calm tone. Are you a doctor? Park Sang-woo turned his eyes toward the source of the sound with some difficulty, but due to the limited angle, he could only see the piece of clothing that Yvonne hung on his chest to replace his white coat. The sterile surgical towel stained with blood made it impossible to see Ivan's face. I'm a doctor, Yvonne replied. Doctor, where is this? Here. Park Sang-woo looked at the surrounding environment with some confusion. The small space in the car, the cracked glass windows, and the dark red scene outside the window, he didn't know anything about it. There is no way to connect this place with an imaginary operating room or ward. Isn't this the Ark? No, we are still in the molten mine area after getting K. Ian's permission, Yvonne answered truthfully. Molten mining area. We are still in the mining area. Park Sang-woo was startled at first, and then immediately became excited. Even his body, which was bound by zip ties on the folding stretcher, began to struggle slightly. Please don't move. Yvonne immediately stretched out his hand, suppressed his body, and then inserted a sedative into the injection port of the indwelling needle with his backhand, and pushed all the medicine in. According to conventional medication standards, excessive use of sedatives is prohibited for seriously injured patients of this level. However, Park Sang-woo is a modified person who has undergone physical strengthening, and his body's tolerance is much stronger than that of ordinary people. This powerful drug, the sedative, only calmed him down a little. The mining area is very unsafe. You must leave immediately. The heretical sect has invaded. Who are you? Park Sang-woo said incoherently, but when Yvonne leaned forward to get the medical kit, he immediately saw the power armor Yvonne was wearing, which made Park Sang-woo's attention instantly focus on the identity of the doctor in front of him. You're not from a heretical section. Are you? He asked. No,
We are the search and rescue team sent by ARC. We found your rescue cabin in the mining area and performed emergency rescue on you, Yvonne said to him. P.S. Tomorrow is the National Day. I wish my motherland a happy birthday in advance, and I also wish everyone a happy National Day holiday. Please be sure to take epidemic prevention measures when you go out. This is coming from a hard-working author who can't even take a holiday during the National Day holiday and has to write.